Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast, episode number 35. My name is Haley, and I'm going to be your host today and every single day that you are tuning in. Today, I am joined with James McCrae. He is an author. He's a poet, an amazing guy. We had such an incredible conversation. If you're familiar with his Instagram account, he's also known as Words Are Vibrations over on there. And he also has a podcast called Words Are Vibrations as well. So we had a really awesome conversation just about what the hell is happening in the world right now from a spiritual lens, from a bit of a different perspective. James also shares a lot of his story and his, spiritual journey, what kind of led him down that path of wanting to share his message and his truth. And yeah, we just had a really insightful, awesome conversation, diving into it all. We get really esoteric today, my friends, so fasten your seatbelts. We dive into everything. So if you're interested in listening to that, then go ahead and tune in. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Philosophy of Fitness podcast. Today, I am joined with James McCrae. He's an author, a writer, super cool guy. Welcome, James.
Thank you, Haley. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on. I have to say, for those of you listening, James has an Instagram account called Words Are Vibrations, and I stumbled on your account I think maybe like a month or so ago, and every single post I'm like laughing to myself. I'm like, this is so spot on. For anyone listening that's into spiritual, esoteric, energy stuff, things that are in that realm, it's so relatable and it's so refreshing to see because I feel like it's a really unique space that you've tapped into. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. One of the great things about one of the silver linings of being in quarantine is just having time to create, digital content. And I've just been like making memes and just like, finding ways to be busy and creative and productive on my phone. And then it just led to me just like making a bunch of little online spiritual memes, and it's been super fun.
Yeah, they're spot on. I'm telling you guys, you have to check out his account because everything. I want to reshare everything because it's so like relatable. So before we really dive into everything, I just wanted to kind of give everyone a little bit of your background, and I'm not really totally familiar with your background too. So if you want to kind of just dive into that.
Yeah, totally. I grew up in Minnesota. Lived there for, grew up there. Moved to New York City in 2012, which was, kind of a big jump into the unknown for me at that time. I kind of, quit my job and just kind of took a leap of faith, hoping to kind of become a writer in New York City. That seemed like the place to do it. That's where all of the writers and poets that I'd kind of looked up to it seemed to have passed through New York City. It seemed like something that I needed to do. And yeah, shortly after arriving in New York City, I was like struggling to find a job. I was struggling to just kind of gain my footing. And that's when Hurricane Sandy hit. And I had just got my first apartment, and Hurricane Sandy completely wiped out and destroyed my apartment. And I was unemployed, homeless,
Wow.
not many friends in the city, still trying to set down roots. And I had a friend that was living in this Caribbean island called Culebra. And he's like, listen, come stay with me for a while, just until, the dust settles. And I ended up like writing out the aftermath of the hurricane on this small Caribbean island. And that's when I essentially had like a bit of a transformation in a way, because I had, you know, I basically didn't have any money. I had no where to live. I was kind of stranded on this little island, and it really just kind of like led me to do a lot of like self discovery and self searching. And that's kind of when I started to realize that, like, okay, human beings have an ego and they also have like a higher self. And essentially, like, our daily lives are an ongoing dialogue and battle between the ego and the higher self. And that's what it's like, that really became clear to me. And I realized, like, oh, that's kind of a cool topic for a book. And I ended up just writing a bunch of stuff around that. And then it ended up becoming my first book, which is called Shit Your Ego Says. And it was just kind of an amazing experience because I thought that I had like completely failed. Like I had moved to New York City, I had failed, I was homeless, like I was at the end of my, you know, end of my rope. But it was in that experience that kind of led me to, writing a book and becoming an author. And it was actually like the failure was actually like a stepping stone in disguise kind of thing. So, and since then I've just been writing a ton and creating online content. And luckily I my fiance and I, we had a foresight to leave New York City at the end of 2019. We were living in this small studio apartment in Manhattan, and we got out basically just before COVID hit.
Wow. Oh my God, you lucked
we
out.
we lucked out.
I'm in New York right
You
now,
are
so
where are you in New York? In Manhattan?
no, I'm on Long
Long
Island, but I
Island?
mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like every single day, it's like we're this close to, a lockdown again, or this happens. Everything is so, rapid fire changing. But wow, you guys really got out
We got
in
out
the nick
just
of
in time,
time.
and we went to LA, and that was a lot better because we lived in Topanga Canyon, which was like it was like a enchanted forest basically. So even though we were locked down, we had nature all around us. We had trees in our, surrounded by trees. But then, the fire started picking up in Topanga, and then um, the lockdowns were getting more severe in California. So now we recently relocated to Austin, Texas, and that's where I am now.
Oh,
so
how do you like it down there? I've heard good
so it's
things.
been a bit of a journey. It's great. I had never lived in the South. I'd never lived in Texas. I had barely even visited Texas. Never imagined myself being here, but it's such a chill place. I mean, Austin in particular, everyone's super nice. I'm from Minnesota, so you know, it feels similar in a way, just in the sense of everyone's genuine, everyone's nice, and um, it's a cool city with a lot going on here. So far, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people that have relocated during this craziness that's been going on in the world, and even just changing their path. I think going back to something you said about failure being a stepping stone, I think that's so huge. Because I myself, I worked a corporate job in the city, and I call it kind of like a soul sucking trajectory. At least it was for me. I felt so unfulfilled, and so I quit that. I totally switched my path towards fitness, personal trainer, doing all that kind of stuff, and it's from the failure sometimes. It's from being down and being kind of almost at like a rock bottom that we can really find our place and our strength. And I think even in terms of a spiritual standpoint, I don't know if you would agree with this, but when I had my spiritual awakening, I was going through an immense amount of pressure and pain in my life that ultimately led me to that place of seeking a deeper understanding of, what the meaning of all of this is. So I don't know if that's something that resonates with you, but
Yeah, totally. And along those same lines, I know that your, specialty is in, fitness and the spirituality fitness relationship. And during that same time in New York, so after I was on this island in the Caribbean, and I eventually found my way back to New York City, and I had found some like cheap room to rent, and like I had some side jobs, and I still like didn't have any foundation or grounding. And I remember one day I was meditating, and it was my first time I had meditated in a long time, and like I guess I really needed to do it. And while I was meditating, the word kundalini kind of came to my head, and I didn't know what that was. I had never
oh
done
wow.
yoga before. I had never really explored, any types of yoga or, Eastern spirituality really. And after meditating, I looked the word up and I found out that it was a kind of yoga. And I ended up like, oh, I just kind of feel called to do this. So I started practicing Kundalini yoga, and it totally changed my life. It totally gave me a sense of just like grounding in New York. And I think living in a stressful place, or even a stressful time like we all do now, um, I feel like it drives you to find that inner balance within yourself. So my life was so stressful at the time that going to Kundalini on a regular basis, it just really gave me a sense of stability and inner peace, because you've got to kind of like work hard for that when there's so much around you that's kind of going crazy. And I ended up like actually becoming like a Kundalini. I went through like a teacher training program, and like
Oh, wow.
ended up like really having a pretty regular yoga practice ever since then, both Kundalini and other forms as well.
Yeah, that's such a huge point about, when pressure goes on around us and we're grasping at all these things outside of ourselves to try to find a way to balance it. But I think something that I've realized in my path, and it sounds like you have too, and I think collectively what's going on right now is that we really only have control of our choice. I always think of our choice as like our human superpower. So we have the choice of how we respond. So at least for me in my experience, really diving inward and trying to manage that rather than being so reactionary has been something that has helped me. So do you find that meditating has done that for you?
Yeah, I at at this point I can't really imagine not having a meditation practice. Um, and it's just a good check-in. I when I wake up, I don't feel awake and kind of balanced until I do a little meditation. And sometimes I like to do long meditation. Sometimes it's great to do like an hour, just to really go in it, get in it. But you also don't need to. You can do 10 minutes, you can do 8 minutes. If you are in a rush and just need a quick like check in with yourself, just doing like a quick breath of fire,
Yeah.
rapid breathing through your nose or through your mouth, that will just connect you back with your body, connect you back with your, you know, higher self, so to speak. Because otherwise, we're just reacting to stimulus, we're reacting to the news, we're reacting to social media, we're reacting to everything we need to do during the day. And if we're constantly reacting, we can't act from a place of, you know, inner balance and self. So, whether it's meditation, whether it's yoga, whatever it is, but meditation is just like a really, foolproof way. It's a really reliable way, just to reconnect, and that gives you a complete more autonomy to kind of act from a place of empowerment rather than just reactivity.
Yeah, for sure. I think collectively right now, I think on a global scale, a lot of us are stuck in that reactionary state, right? Like different things are coming out every single day. There's so much going on. Mainstream media is constantly, feeding us the fear. And it's easy to get caught into that mindset of being reactionary. And I think now more so than ever, in recent times, I think this is probably the most reactionary we've been as a collective, I don't even know the last time that it's been this crazy. So you lived in New York, which has a really strong hustle culture, like you said, super stressful environment. It's very much go, go, go. So aside from meditating, what would you say are some other things that sort of helped you stay grounded through that and have those also carried through to you now in terms of what we're dealing with on a global scale?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I've compared, like, I've had a lot of other friends that have left New York in recent years, and I've told them recently that, like, looking back, it feels like living in New York was like living in like some kind of like a Buddhist ashram in a way. And what I mean by that is like there's this certain discipline that you get from living there, because every day is kind of intense. You can't go to the grocery store without having to, either get on a subway or like walk down a crowded street, like go into a crowded store. Everything's really kind of pressure all around you. So it's like you have to, if you're gonna like just not get kind of totally swept away in that, you need to have like discipline. Like it kind of like taught me like in a way like spiritual discipline. And meditation, it taught me like the importance of meditation, it taught me the importance of yoga, it taught me the importance of going deep inside of yourself, because if you don't do that, you're just going to get kind of tossed in the wind of external circumstances. So I feel like living there for me was just, it was training for everything that we're going through now in 2020 and now 2021 is, you know, not getting sucked up in the whirlwind around you and just being able to stay balanced, stay grounded, and knowing that, you know, our internal reality and the internal experience can, in a sense, it can kind of transcend what's happening around us. We can live in a world that is crazy and not feel and not have to react to the craziness. We can bring our own energy to the world. We can bring our own balance to the world. And instead of like letting the world impact us and make us go crazy, we can actually help alleviate some of that craziness by bringing peaceful, positive, energy to the situation. And yeah, that's stronger than kind of just like getting sucked up in all the craziness.
Absolutely. I like that idea of, kind of like a reversal, right? So rather than us absorbing what's going on around us, why don't we flip the perspective and say, you know what, I'm going to influence my energy to affect everything around me. And there's a great quote from one of my favorite quotes ever. It's from William Ernest Henley. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And those are words that I love to live by. So if you think of your being and your energy as your own vessel that you can protect, but that you can also share with the world, again, flipping that perspective around so that you can do that you can shine that light rather than having to absorb like a bad energy magnet, everything that's coming sucked into you. So kind of to backpedal a little bit, because I'm curious. I know you said that you thought about shit your ego says back when you were in the Caribbean, right? Like you kind of had that idea. So what exactly is that about? Like what led you to want to share that?
When I was, I basically felt like I was a failure. Like I had moved to New York without much of a plan or a safety net. And when, I was already having a hard enough time to kind of find my place there, and then to become, homeless on top of that because of the hurricane, I noticed so many negative thoughts circling in my head, like self sabotage, like fear based thoughts, like, oh, I'm a failure. I should never have moved to New York. This was stupid. You're not good enough to, get a job in New York. Like you're not good enough to like make it as a writer. And I just, usually I think people live their lives with a lot of, negative self-talk, and we just distract ourselves from it. We distract ourselves with television, with, you know, in the past when stuff was open, like going out or whatever it was. And being in the Caribbean on literally like a deserted island, essentially, I had nowhere to run. I had nothing to distract myself with. So I was really left alone with my own thoughts to kind of sort it out. It's like it's a little bit what like I think quarantine has been for so many people, where it's almost like the universe has sat us down and said, okay, now think about what you've done. like
Yeah.
like we're all kind of gone time out, or we're all kind of grounded, and we're all kind of left alone with ourselves. And then we have to figure out, well, do I like what I'm left alone with? Do I like when everything else is gone and it's just me in a room, do I like myself? And for me, I got a little bit of a head start with that in 2012, just, having to evaluate how I've been living, how I've been putting myself out there, and just coming to the realization that I didn't have to, just because you think something doesn't make it true. We are not our thoughts. So my
Yep.
thoughts were, you know, they were just that's what how most people live their lives, I think, is like through a little bit, not it doesn't have to be excessive, it doesn't have to like be self-hatred, you don't have to be suicidal to like actually have negative self-talk. And I think so many people live their lives with negative self-talk, doubt, fear, judgment of yourself, judgment of others. And you think that's just normal, you think all those thoughts are true. But when you realize that you are not your thoughts, and there's a quieter voice that is also in our heads that isn't as loud as the ego, but it's more like a soft whisper, and that's the voice of the higher self. And that's the voice of trust and reassurance. And um, I guess I realized how important it was to switch your identification from identifying with your ego and all of your negative self-talk and all of the, just the random thoughts that come about day to day, and then switching our identification to the higher self, which is, an expanded perspective where it's like, you know, this is my situation, but, how can, um, how can I elevate above that? And, it was such an important lesson for me that, yeah, it, uh, the book just kind of flowed out, and it was really, moving from a place of anxiety and into a place of intuition.
That's a powerful switch right there. That's
Yeah.
like, that is groundbreaking. Once you've done that, that's huge. Um, I'm thinking about what you said even earlier of like, I liked the analogy of the universe has us grounded right now. We're all stuck at home. And I think on a grand scale, we've kind of just been forced to do like collective shadow work, right? It's like you're stuck at home. There's no distractions now. There's nowhere to go escape from it. Like you said, you can't go out, you can't party it away, you can't do whatever. You literally have to face yourself and integrate that. I think that's huge too. I think sometimes a misconception in the spiritual community is that everything is love and light and, rainbows and daisies, woohoo, positive energy. But a big part of that is facing your shadow, right? And just becoming aware of that, and sometimes deconstructing beliefs that we've been led to have about ourselves. Like you said, some of that low vibrational stuff, like the anxiety, the guilt, the judgment, and unraveling that and unlearning it, and then moving forward with that sense of awareness. So, yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, I think that, so many people in their lives have had like a dark night of the soul where it's like you lose everything, or like your perception of reality unravels because, something happens, or, and the dark night of the soul is exactly what you said. It's shadow work. It's going inside of yourself and kind of facing your deepest fears and deepest insecurities. And I don't want to even say conquering them, but more just like making peace with them, and then kind of rising from that and seeing the world from an elevated perspective where you've integrated the shadow, so you no longer project, negative emotions on your external surroundings because you've made peace with the shadow within yourself. And I one thing I've noticed is that the people in my life that I know who have gone through a dark night of the soul already, and they've already faced their shadow, and they've already kind of emerged like a phoenix from the ashes,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, those people are doing a lot better right now because they've been here. They've already faced their biggest fears, and now it's just like they know kind of what's on the other end of that. And this is a broad generalization, but and the people who haven't, had to face something in their lives that's challenging, or even, I think psychedelics are another metaphor that works as well. Like, the psychedelic experience can take someone down into darkness, into the shadow, and it can be a terrifying experience. But then you get through that and come out the other end, and you understand and you integrate that shadow. And the people who have experience with these things, dark nights of the soul, you know, deep psychedelic journeys, I feel like that's kind of been training ground for what the world is kind of experiencing now. And yeah, and for everyone who hasn't had a chance to face that, and this is new, it's easy to understand why everyone's kind of collectively freaking out right now.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny how you say, people that had their dark night of the soul already are a little bit more equipped for this. I had a lot of shit go down for me in 2019 that I would absolutely consider my dark night of the soul. Like towards the end of that year, totally deconstructed me, and just led me on this immense journey of inner work and understanding myself more. And I think if I hadn't had that happen, that I would have, had it happen here in the pandemic, the same thing would have happened. I think that same unraveling process, and I think that's kind of what the universe is pulling us towards right now, right? It's like, wake up, people, like, let's figure this shit out, because clearly it's not working right now.
Yeah, if you can't make friends with your own fear, and yeah, I'm trying to not use like aggressive language, like conquer your fear, but just making peace with it and like integrating it. If you don't do that, your fear is going to control you, and you're going to get, and this is an opportunity. This is a this is a dark night of the soul for the world, and the silver lining of that, it's an invitation for us all, if we can not resist that and not try to fight back and become more reactive and more fearful, which is right now what we're kind of seeing, is like a lot of people are really freaking out, but really taking that opportunity to evaluate our own fears and insecurities, and hopefully making peace with it, so we don't let ourselves be controlled by our fear, because fear at the end of the day is it's really the only enemy. Once you can make
Yeah.
peace, you don't conquer it, you make peace with it. Once you make peace with your fear, you're essentially indestructible, because we're all going to die someday. It's just, and once you really come to peace with that, nothing is as serious as our fear tries to make us think it is, you know. So
Yeah, that's powerful. Fear is the common enemy. I mean, you said it. I was thinking it in my head when you said it. It's so true. And kind of to segue into just what's going on the global landscape, the climate right now. In my opinion, I've said this before in some of my previous episodes, but I think that this is the most exciting time to be alive. And I know that that's going to be a hot take for some people listening to this, but when things fall apart in the way that they are right now, when things are deconstructing this rapidly, and the veil has been lifted so much in our face right now, like, this isn't anything new. This shit's been going on, for a long time. It's just that we're bluntly aware of everything that's going on. And I think it's from that awareness now that we have the power now as our own beings, right, to kind of make a way for what we want. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, like in terms of the future. What do you hope for in the future? What do you think is going to be happening with the rate that things are going now?
yeah, I think it's so many things happening at the same time. Um, it's, there's a pandemic, and the pandemic is almost forgotten because of everything else that's on top of that.
Yeah.
The shutdowns, the quarantines, all the new laws that are being passed, the, um, you know, the police state that's really rising as a reaction to it. All the political stuff, all the economic stuff, and all the conspiracy theories that are coming out, all the the spiritual awakening that people are having. This is all happening at the same time. Even, I don't know if you're following all of the alien disclosure stuff
Oh
that's coming
yeah.
out. Every
Yep.
every other day there's a new government release or leak or disclosure around UFOs and alien space programs and all kinds of weird stuff. So what's happening is not one thing, it's many things at once. And one of my favorite kind of thinkers is Terence McKenna, who is kind of I guess you could just call him a philosopher in a way, a speaker. But what he talked about, and he passed away in the year 2000, but listening to his lectures now, it's like he was so spot on to understanding what was already happening in the world. And he talked about how the world and society was accelerating at an exponential rate. So in other words, you know, more more will happen in 1 year now than would have happened in a million years, a billion years ago. So the rate of novelty and the rate of change and the acceleration of technology and just the amount of information and data in the world, it's increasing exponentially, faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And we've seen that with computer chip technology, right? Like every year the chip technology doubles. And so what you're looking at is a rate of evolution that's not necessarily just like upward. It comes to a point where it's almost the curve becomes almost straight up. And this is what many people have called the singularity, which is, a term that it's kind of essentially means where the technology intelligence outpaces human intelligence, or the
Yeah.
singularity is a point of complete and utter change. And funnily enough, I remember back in 2012, people, some people talked about the world ending because it was
Yep.
the end of the Mayan calendar. And that was actually something that Terence McKenna himself had identified. He had actually studied the Mayan calendar himself, and he was the one that kind of came to that realization that according to this ancient calendar, the world is ending in 2012. Now, 2012, when we're talking about a calendar that's thousands and thousands and thousands of years in duration, the difference in an 8-year window from 2012 to 2020, it's pretty much insignificant. So I think, and I think what the Mayan calendar signifies is not the end of the world in a literal sense; it's the end of an age. So I
Yep.
think that the technological singularity, the changing from one age to another, which also is symbolized in the changing of the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius, which a lot of people believe is kind of happening now. It just seems like we're in the middle of a grand transformation. And I think that it's absolutely impossible for anyone to predict when everything is changing so quickly and so many things are happening at once. It's impossible to predict what the outcome will be. But I think it is fair to say we're going through, a massive transformation as people, as a society, as a world. And I think, in 5 years, the world's going to look, you know, so drastically different from what it does now. And I think anyone that's in the prediction game is going to have a hard time because it's so hard to predict when things are changing so rapidly. But yeah, we're here for it, and like you said, it's exciting, and it's also a bit scary, when things are so uncertain. But that's where meditation comes in. That's where yoga comes in. That's where fitness comes in as well, and all kinds of spiritual practices, so we can weather the storm. Because I do believe I'm an optimist. I do think things look bad in the moment, but like you said, a lot of people are waking up right now, and a lot of people are going through their own transformations. And I think that when enough people essentially reach a higher level of consciousness, and the veil is lifted on all the corruption that's happening in the world, um, I do think that we will kind of collectively um, create a better world together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it comes down to raising our vibration as a whole, right? But in order to do that, we have to first do that with ourselves. And something interesting you pointed out, I know a lot of people went crazy for the Mayan calendar back in 2012. I went crazy for it. I know so many people that did. And a lot of people had that same thinking about the Great Conjunction that just happened in December. I think what was it, Saturn and Jupiter? I think they were conjunct or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So it was the same kind of thing. I think, some people were like, oh, this is going to end. I think it's not so much a literal death of something or an end of something. I think it's actually the death of an old system or the end of an old way to usher in a new era, because look at how rapidly things are happening from December 21st to now. Like I said, that rapid craziness of just everything sort of being thrown at us at once and forcing us to be like, what the hell is going on? I think that is such a strong indication that this is the time now more than ever to raise our vibration, to go inward, because the more that we do that, they say energy flows where intention goes. So the more that we focus on raising our vibration, going onto the positive trajectory of what we want, then that's like the track we want to stay on,
Yeah. And another metaphor for that, and some people believe this literally. I don't believe anything literally, but I think that everything can be, used as a metaphor to kind of help, paint a picture. So some people talk about the splitting of Earth is splitting into two timelines.
Yep.
There's the 3D fear-based timeline, and there's the 5D, you know, elevated timeline. And I don't know like how true that is in a literal sense, but I think it's a good metaphor. Where we're giving a choice. We're given a choice right now. Do we want to cling to the old? And the old is breaking down. Like you see what's happening in the U.S. Government. It is crumbling. The seams are splitting. We're seeing the all the cracks in the economy. We're seeing the cracks in our healthcare system. We're seeing the cracks in our political system. Do we really want to cling to that old world and live in the fear that world is vibrating on right now? Or do we want to let go and allow ourselves to kind of ride this wave into a new world? And we all have that choice. And I think we're going to, we talk about herd immunity. Well, there's a certain fear herd immunity where when enough people decide to let go of the old world and start creating a new one, that's when we can really start to manifest and crystallize a new world, when enough people decide to let go of the old and essentially jump into the unknown and create the new world together. And I think that's exactly what's happening right now with so many people.
Yeah, absolutely. The collective energy. You actually made a post, I think, I don't know if it was yesterday, but it was about riding the wave of everything going on with Grace. And that's so brilliant. It's so true. And it's like, you think about it, why are so many of us, like you said, clinging on? When you feel that much resistance, at what point do you say we should probably just let this go and think about what we actually want? Because the more you're feeding your energy into what you don't want, you're just going to be collectively, I don't say it as an individual, but we're just going to be collectively creating more of that. And
Yeah.
the harder it's going to be to let go of that and shift.
Yeah, all society is what we all collectively agree to call it. Everything is a social agreement. We've all agreed that, okay, money is this and laws are this, and these are all just social agreements. There's no rule that this is just the way it should be or has to be, or, it's a little bit arbitrary based on the agreements we've made with each other. And I think now when those agreements are broken, when it's been exposed as not working anymore, we can just let go of those old constructs and create new ones. And that's scary because we don't know what the new ones look like yet. And people are afraid of letting go of the old is going to, what does that mean? It's hard to let go. We're addicted and attached to these things. But we can create new agreements. We can just agree to, money can be something different, healthcare can be something different. We don't have to cling to the old systems when they're not working anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the way. And honestly, that's what I'm, hoping for, regardless of any affiliation, is just that we get clear about what it is that we want and who it is that we want to be. First, starting with ourselves. I think the learning lesson that I've experienced in all of this is that if we want to really help other people, if we want to make an impact on this world, we've got to work on ourselves first and really understand and get to know ourselves. And I think that this global situation has been just that. Like we said, this is the time that people have been forced to stay at home, figure it out, and I think that this has also been the necessary pause for enough people to delve into the spiritual realm. It's something that seemed really esoteric in mainstream culture, I think, for a lot of the time, and most people would just dismiss it. At least that's what my experience was. But I think now, as you've said, also more and more people are waking up to this, and it's starting to become more and more accepted in the mainstream and talked about. And I think that that's super important too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that some people are waiting and hoping to go back to normal. And, I think that there's just a better opportunity here to create, people talk about the new normal, and that, they're talking about things like, vaccinations and, just different restrictions and curfews or whatever it is. But let's create the new normal in our, in a new image. Let's not accept the fear-based new normal. Let's actually like bring our own energy to the table and figure out ways to connect and build community in a way that's going to be beneficial for everyone, and not having this kind of top down, structure, this hierarchy of, corporations and religions and politics that are just governed from the top down, and we're kind of subject to being, you know, um, essentially pawns in this, this hierarchy, or this patriarchy, and have more of a communal, decentralized future where, and that's one thing I love about, like cryptocurrency and blockchain
Yeah.
and Bitcoin. It's the decentralization of currency. And the same thing's happening in, you mentioned spirituality. We don't, less and less people are like maybe um buying into like old religion structures where like you need to go to a church and have a priest and all these things. You can have a decentralized spirituality where it's personal, and you can kind of, design something that works for you. So all across the board, we're seeing um, decentralization of power, um, and, you know, community-based initiatives that give me hope for you know, a better future, and, an actual new age of humanity.
Absolutely. That's such a good point with, decentralized, how powerful that is. And I think something shooting off of that is just autonomy of the self, right? Like thinking for yourself now. I think that's something that's going to be huge. I don't follow mainstream media. I'm aware of what's going on, obviously, but I just feel that it's fear pandering. It kind of keeps us in that low vibration. So I would encourage anyone out there listening, think for yourself. Think about, what's being presented to you. Question everything. I think that's huge too, is to not just blindly accept what we've been told all of our lives. Start questioning that, dive inward. You'd be surprised how many answers you can actually find listening to yourself rather than listening to some person on the news telling you what you should think. And that has me hopeful for the future too, as I think a lot of people now are finally starting to figure things out for themselves. Like you said, decentralized even with spirituality. It's not one size fits all. It's not you have to do this, you have to be this way. It's just an overall sense of autonomy that I think is going to be on the rise.
Hmm. Yeah, and the same with education. Like, we used to have to go to a university and get all this training in something that didn't turn out to be that useful, and it was more student debt driven, and just kind of like proving that you had the right criteria. And now it's like you can learn, how many different people are out there offering different kind of online coaching, and like
So many.
there's there are so many people you can learn from, and you can become a well-rounded expert in so many things without setting foot in a traditional university.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny you say that because I've said now, I'm pretty sure if you tried, you could get an entire college education on YouTube. Like there's so much out there that you don't need, the degree, the certificate. I mean, what I'm doing with my life now, I'm not even using my college degree for. So, yeah, again, like you said, sort of these old systems falling apart. But when they fall apart, that's what paves the way for the new stuff to come in.
exactly. You have to jump into the unknown before you know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, that's scary, but that's what we have to do. Nobody knows what the future has to hold, right? I don't have a crystal ball. You don't.
Yeah,
We're kind of just figuring out it as we go, but we know what we don't want. So let's not put our attention there. That's what I think.
exactly. And it's exciting. It's kind of terrifying. But ultimately, we're all on a journey, and that's what we're here to do. We didn't come to Earth. I kind of believe that our souls are here for a reason. Um, and that reason isn't just to live a predictable life where everything's kind of, you're going to get a job and go to work every day for, decades, and then you're going to retire, and then you're going to, spend time with your grandkids. It's like, there's not all that's, it's a nice life. And that's kind of what our parents and grandparents and for generations have really been doing. But, you know, being born into a situation like this, to me, is such a valuable experience for our souls,
Yeah.
and after every after every challenge in life that I faced, and I look back on it, and I can see, even though I was uncomfortable in the moment, I can see how much I learned from it, how much I grew from it, and how valuable it was for me as a person. And I really hope and do believe that one day we're all going to look back as a collective at this time and think, look how much we grew and learned from that. And we couldn't be where we are now without having gone through that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm in the same boat. I think that this is going to be collective, growing pains, shadow work, as I said, and something that we will eventually look back on and say this was the necessary pain, right? That sort of was the catalyst to push us where we really just need to be, but it took this kick in the butt, this fall down to just get us to wake up to that. That's what I think.
Amen.
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, if people are interested in staying connected with you, where can they find you? Where can they check out your stuff?
I'm mostly on Instagram. My handle is words are vibrations. I share pretty much daily, memes, poetry, but like what I try to make it like exciting, funny poetry, not, boring poetry. Um, and I have a new-ish podcast that you can check out. You can find it on my Instagram account, but that's pretty new. But we're gonna do some cool stuff with that as well. But Instagram is probably the best way.
Yeah, let me tell you guys, his Instagram account does not disappoint. Every single day I see those posts, they make me smile. So check out Words Are Vibration. I'm telling you, Words Are Vibrations with an S. Like I said, it certainly won't disappoint. But James, thank you so much for coming on. This was an amazing little interview. So I'm so glad that I could chat with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Haley. This was great. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Yeah.